Hello everyone, and welcome to my YouTube channel called Living in Hayward, Wisconsin, where we talk about all things real estate related and also just about living in Hayward. And I'm Audrey Miller. I'm the broker owner of Northwest Wisconsin Realty Team. We're located right on Main Street in Hayward, so stop by and see us sometime. And today we're going to delve into the subject Tier 2 lakes. I did a video a few weeks ago about the Tier 1 lakes in the Hayward area, and today we're going to take a deep dive, unintended, into the Tier 2 lakes in the area. So I think you'll enjoy this video and gain a lot of insights into some of the additional lakes in the area besides the most expensive, most desirable Tier 1 lakes. These are really awesome lakes, and we'll get started in discussing those with you. So as a real estate agent in the Hayward Lakes area, one of the discussions that I have all the time with people when they're starting to search for a lake home or a second home property or an investment property, what lake do you want to be on? Do you have a lake size minimum? What about the elevation to the water? What about the water clarity? So these are conversations that I have on an ongoing and frequent basis with many buyers in the area, and honestly conversations with sellers as well when discussing pricing of their homes. Has a lot to do with what the desirability is of the lake that they have their property on. I'm Audrey Miller. As I said, I'm the broker owner of Northwest Wisconsin Realty Team. I work with both buyers and sellers. I think probably about 70% of my business is with second home and investment owners. A lot of lakefront property that I help people to sell or help people to buy. So feel free to reach out anytime. You can email me, text me, call me, and let me know if you're thinking of selling or buying. I'd be happy to help you. And also, if you like my channel, feel free to subscribe, click the button for the notifications so you get an update when a new video comes out. Feel free to comment, share my channel. I love when people comment. I love the interaction of that. So if you have any feedback, any thoughts on this video, another subject you'd like me to address, any of that, I would appreciate your feedback at any time, whether through comments on my channel or just contacting me directly as well. So what makes a lake a Tier 2 lake in the Hayward and surrounding areas? Basically, it is just the level that is below the Tier 1. If you listen to my Tier 1 lakes video, we talked about lake size, clarity, desirability, bars and restaurants on the lake, price points. And so the Tier 2 lakes are the ones that lots of people want to be on. They're difficult to get on a lot of times because not much property comes up for sale. They're highly desirable, but they either are not requested quite as often as the Tier 1 lakes, maybe not as well known, or they just don't garner quite as high of prices as the Tier 1 lakes. These are not necessarily lakes that have lesser water quality, but they are all smaller than the Tier 1 lakes. And there's just this segment of people that wants to be on the biggest lakes in the area. So if you want to be on the biggest lakes in the area, then the Tier 1 lakes video would be the one to watch. But this is Tier 2. These are wonderful, wonderful lakes. And some of them are a little bit underrated in my opinion. And I'll tell you also at the end of the video, the one lake that I believe has the most affordability for what it offers within the Hayward area. I also wanted to mention, as I'm going through price points and sale information on these lakes, I decided to go back 2 years this time instead of one, just to give a little bit broader comps. I felt like when I did the Tier 1 lakes video, going back 1 year kind of skewed some averages depending on what specific properties sold, since there's so few comps on some of these lakes. So I am going back 2 years. Our market has remained very steady for about 2 years now with some very slight adjustments. So normally in a very ascending or descending market, I would not go back 2 years because it's not going to be comparable to today. But I feel like a 2-year history, which would give us 2 summers of sales. That's our sale season up here in the Northwoods, obviously, when there's not snow and ice on the ground. So we have 2 years of history on these lakes, might give us a little bit better, more accurate analysis of an average sale price on these lakes. So I did want to mention that. And now I'm just going to dive into them one by one and kind of talk about specifics of each lake and show you some sale price information and what you can expect to pay if you're looking to be on these specific lakes. Okay, so let's start with a general overview of where these lakes are located. These are all the lakes I'm going to be talking about in the Tier 2 category today. So we'll go from the north. This is the Barnes area. It's about a half hour from Hayward to the north and a little bit to the, well, basically straight north, as you can see. This is called the Eau Claire chain of lakes, and there's upper, middle, and lower Eau Claire chain. And then moving to the south, We're going to talk about Nelson Lake, which is located right here, just to the west of Hayward and between Hayward and Sealy. We're going to talk about Little Lakoutere, which is down in this area, kind of right by where it says reserve. And then we are going to discuss the lakes that are located around the Stone Lake area. And let me just zoom in a little bit so you can see these in the Stone Lake area. So you've got Sand Lake here, and then you have Whitefish Lake right here, and then you have Stone Lake itself right there. So those are all within close proximity to Stone Lake. And then we also have Sisebagama, which is right here. So beyond that, the other ones we're going to discuss today are Shell Lake, which is over to the east and kind of on the edge of the area that I cover. Just a reminder, I cover about 45 minutes in any direction from Hayward. So Shell Lake is just on the edge of what I cover, but I do some work over there. And then we're going to talk about Red Cedar Lake, which is right down here, just south of Birchwood. So I think that covers the 9 lakes that we're going to discuss today and kind of the general area where they are located in proximity to Hayward, in proximity just to the area of the Northwoods. Obviously, anything over towards the west is going to be slightly closer when you're coming from the Twin Cities, for example. That's where a lot of our second home buyers are coming from. But also the Stone Lake area, where Little LCO and the 4 other lakes I mentioned in that area, you're really only about 2.5 hours, maybe 2 hours and 45 minutes from the Twin Cities when you're going to those lakes as well. So good location, and only about 20 to 25 minutes from Hayward when you're here. So it's a nice central location for proximity to the Twin Cities and distance to Hayward as well. It makes the Stone Lake area really desirable, I feel like, and that's where a number of the lakes we're going to talk about today are located. Now again, same as with the Tier 1 lakes, I did not include any condo properties. Some of these lakes do have condos on them, condo cabins. Just a reminder, that's when you have shared frontage, some other shared amenities, you're in a association, you have HOA fees, and you own your cabin, but you share the ownership of the land with other people. I did not include condo cabins. They're always going to be less expensive. You can get on a bigger lake for less with a condo cabin, but you give up some privacy. So it's something to discuss. Like if you're talking about what you want to buy and what you're looking for, some people know if they do or don't want a condo. Other people might be open to both, and we can just definitely discuss that in the process of deciding where you want to purchase a second home. Okay, so now we're going to go through the lakes one by one, and this time I actually organized them in order of the highest to lowest price point per average sale price on these lakes. So, and also, like I said, keep tuned for the end of this video, and I'll tell you a little bit about the vacant land that has sold on these lakes, and also kind of a surprising value in the area when it comes to lake desirability, location, and price point. So we're going to start with Red Cedar Lake. This is the one down by Birchwood. Very clear, clean, beautiful, full recreational lake. It actually also is navigable to 2 other small lakes that are around 300 acres. Red Cedar itself is about 1,900 acres, and it's navigable to Balsam and Hemlock. Now, somebody who lives on there knows probably a little bit more than I do about what type of boat can navigate between those lakes and what times of year, if you can do that any time of the year, if it depends on rainfall, etc. I don't have the details of that, but I know those 3 lakes are connected. So Red Cedar is a little bit further from kind of the center of the vacation community up here, which is Hayward, but in a very nice area. Birchwood is a great little town, and one thing that's very unique about Red Cedar is that there is a beach club called Loch Lomond, and Loch Lomond was a area that was formed a long time ago with all these lots that are not on the water, but where you potentially have a dock on the water. However, there's a shortage of docks available, so it's not a given that if you buy in the Loch Lomond Beach Club that you're going to get a dock on the water, which I know is a big deciding factor for lots of people. So for these purposes, I did not include any of the land or houses that are off water, but in the Loch Lomond area that may have potential for docks on the water. Those price points are very different than these, and so I didn't want to skew the numbers, but that is something to maybe explore in that area. The Loch Lomond Beach Club has like a swimming pool, they have tennis courts, they have some other amenities that the members can use, and there is HOA fees associated with that as well. So this is just for properties that were actually on the water on Red Cedar. So as you can see, a number of properties in the last 2 years sold on this lake. We have a total of 15 properties, so a little bit more than some of the other lakes, and the average price was $968,000. Once you're looking at this, as I'm going through these, there's a ton of information on here that you can look at as well. So I'll just point this out on this particular one. This is how many days on market average, very low. Keep in mind that most closings take 30 to 60 days. So if you are seeing an 84-day number on there, that means that they went under contract probably within right around 30 days on the market average. And you can actually see for each one, there's 2 that were on the market for a long time, and then look at some of these other numbers. So as I'm going through these different sheets, feel free to, kind of read this additional information. You can see there was a number of really high-end properties on Red Cedar, and then, the least expensive was $575. But I think this is a good average, and it shows you the date that they sold, what percentage of list price. Here's the average of the list price. So there's a ton of information on here that might be of interest to you as we go through these one by one. So the next lake I'm going to discuss is Sisebagama. Sisebagama is the one that is located just a few minutes, probably about 10 minutes from Stone Lake. Some of you may be familiar with the Pine Ridge fish fry. I've recommended this on my Best of Hayward video, and that Pine Ridge Condo Association and restaurant and bar are located on Sisebagama. Sisebagama, again, difficult lake to get on. You can see only 4 properties sold on there in the last 2 years. Only 4 properties sold for an average sale price of $955. Now, again, this is fairly skewed by this one really high-end property. I would say the average on Sisebagama could be closer to that $800,000 to $900,000 range, with some lower and some higher. But again, very few properties to go off of. Other than Pine Ridge, there's no other bar or restaurant on Sisebagama. It is an 800 and some acre lake, and is one that people have been on for years and years. It's a clear lake. It's a family lake that people have, had cabins for a long time, so it can be difficult to get on there. Some people only want to be on this lake because of their history with the lake, and this is actually true for many of the lakes in our area here. You'll find people have a lot of attachment to certain lakes because they coming up there as kids or as teenagers, their families had a cabin on that lake, all of that. So here Sisebagama is really good fishing as well, and that's probably what I have to say about Sisebagama. The next one is Shell Lake. Now, Shell Lake, like I said, is it is on the edge, I should say, of the area that I cover. This lake is 2,000 some acres, so it's pretty large. It's kind of a big circle, but this lake has something unique in that it has some of the lowest consistent low elevation of any lake in the area. This is kind of in the middle of agricultural country, but yet the lake is really clean, really clear, has beautiful sand beach frontage, which is very hard to find on the lakes up here. So if you call me and you say we want something with a sand beach frontage, Shell Lake is probably your best bet. Like I said, lots of low elevation, actually no high elevation just because of the terrain there. Has a really cool beach that is right by the town of Shell Lake, big public beach and campground. So that's a pretty cool thing too, even if you just want to visit there. And Shell Lake is a quaint little town. There's, ice cream shop, restaurants, a main street. And again, this would be your closest one probably to the Twin Cities of the lakes I'm discussing today, this one and Red Cedar probably. So as you can see, average sale price on Shell Lake, $806,000, 99 days on market average, selling for almost 97% of asking price. The next one we're going to discuss is in the Stone Lake area, and this is Whitefish Lake. When I did the Tier 1 lake video, someone mentioned, hey, I live on Whitefish, and I said, just wait, it's coming up in the Tier 2. Whitefish, again, lots of people that have been on there for many years. It is super clear, super clean, 800 and some acre lake, lots of beautiful properties on there, lots of cabins. It's a little more of a tight-knit community on Whitefish than maybe on some of the other lakes, as people have been there a really long time. There's an association on the lake that is pretty active and involved in things. They have a picnic every year where all the lake owners can get together if they want to. And then there's Beachmore Restaurant and Bar. And I actually personally know Darlene and Andy, who have run that place for many, many years. They're wonderful folks. They give back a lot to the community. Everybody knows Darlene and Andy. So if you're in the area, whether you live on Whitefish or looking for property on Whitefish, you should stop by the Beachmore. It is quite a staple of the area and nicest people you'll ever meet, Darlene and Andy. And that's the only bar restaurant on the lake. Again, this is located close to Stone Lake, about 20 minutes from Hayward. And the average sale price on Whitefish in the last year, there were 7 properties that sold for an average of just about $841,000. And again, you see a couple of really high-end ones. I actually worked with the buyer on this first one. It was on some acreage. It was a huge, huge house, 5,600 square feet, a lot of extra frontage. And then this other second one was on a peninsula. So they had a lot of extra land with these two compared to normal. The typical lot, in case you don't know, is 100 feet of shoreline. So anything beyond 100 feet would be considered an extra large lot. And these both had quite significantly larger lots. So then you can see the rest of the properties on Whitefish were in this range. I actually worked with the buyer on this one as well. This one needed some updating and some work. So did this one on the bottom here. In fact, I think all of these in these bottom 5 were some that needed work to a greater or lesser extent. So the average on Whitefish probably for something that is move-in ready might be closer to $700,000 for something on a 100-foot wide lot, maybe on 3/4 of an acre, and that was more move-in ready. I would say $700,000 to 800,000. And then we'll do Stone Lake here. So Stone Lake is the smallest of all of these lakes that we're discussing, but Stone Lake is actually one of the clearest lakes in the state. So it has a really, really awesome water clarity, great location close to the town of Stone Lake. As you can see, 5 properties sold on this lake for an average of $768,000. Stone Lake does not have any bars and restaurants. It's only 520 acres, but it has beautiful, beautiful frontage and great water clarity, great location. I actually worked with the seller on this first property. This was a new construction build on a really large lot at a pole barn, as you can see, about 3,700 square feet of living space. And these others, some of them on Stone Lake have the road in between, particularly on the back side of Stone Lake, so it'd be on the west side, there is Lake Road. It's not a highly traveled road, but the road does run between some of these properties. If that's a deal breaker for you, that might be something to check out when you're talking about Stone Lake in particular. And then we're going to branch out in the other direction. If you remember at the beginning of the video, I talked about the Barnes area and the Eau Claire chain of lakes. And Barnes is a little more in the middle of nowhere. There are bars and restaurants in the area, but to get to a town, you're a little bit further from amenities. You could go to Solon Springs, you could come down to Hayward, Gordon, which is not too much in Gordon. The town of Barnes is not much of anything. So you're a little bit further from amenities, probably about a half hour when you are in the Barnes area. But the Eau Claire chain of lakes, again, what all of these lakes tend to have in common is great water clarity, good size, full recreational. And these are things that a lot of buyers desire. So that's why they, get the highest prices. So the Eau Claire chain of lakes, there's upper, middle, and lower Eau Claire chain. I think between all of them, sorry, I don't know this right off the top of my head, I believe it's around 1,000 acres between all 3 of them. Could be a little bit more than that. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong. I forgot to look up that detail. The average sale price there is $718,000. I've never spent time on this lake, so I don't know as much about it, but I do know that it is a highly desirable, clean, clear lake, and I have sold property on this lake. I don't know if there's any bars or restaurants. Again, maybe somebody can help me with that. I don't think there are, but I could be missing something. The Barnes area is kind of getting into what I call the sand country, which is up towards Gordon and Solon Springs. There's a lot of pines there, a lot more sandy soil. You'll have like scrub oak and pines. It's a little different mix of trees there, a little different soil that produces those trees. So that's kind of an interesting thing about the Barnes area. And then we'll move on to Sand Lake. Sand Lake is one that probably a lot of you have driven past because it is right along Highway 70 on the one side, just right by the intersection of 27 and 70. And again, there's houses on the other side of 70. So that's something to watch for with sand. Now that's a very busy road. So some people don't like to be on the other side of Highway 70. On the other hand, you can get a little more for your money if you don't mind crossing the road to get to your frontage on Sand Lake. Sand Lake is 900 and some acres. It doesn't have any bars and restaurants on it at the moment. There is something in the works, so you'll have to watch for that, probably coming in 2025. So that's kind of news in the community. And deep, deep lake. Very good muskie fishing from what I understand. It's kind of just a circle of a lake, but plenty big enough for pontooning with its 900 plus acres. And again, very, very deep, clean, clear lake. There were 7 properties that sold on this lake, and $638,000 was the average sale price for these properties. Again, reminder, this does not include any condo properties because there were a couple of those that sold on Sand Lake. Sand Lake is an easy short drive up to Hayward, about 20 minutes. The backside of Sand Lake is mostly accessed off of Sand Lake Road. Then there's a couple other little side roads on the east and west ends of the lake as well. So a lot of low elevation. It's called Sand Lake for a reason. The bottom of this lake is almost pure sand. So there's a lot of shallow water. People have long docks. You'll see the pencil reeds growing in this lake some, but overall it has beautiful sandy bottom and great swimming, all of that. And then we have Little Lakoutere. And the reason I'm mentioning this one is because it's in a great location. It is highly desirable, but you can get a little bit more for your money because Little Lakoutere is only a 200 and some acre lake. However, this has access to the main Lakoutere Lake, which is a tier 1 lake. So this is kind of a sleeper sometimes in terms of what you can get on this lake. The frontage is not as good always. I've seen some pretty weedy, sometimes even mucky frontage on Little Lakoutere. Not all of it is, depending where you are. You can have really nice frontage there as well. It can be a little bit challenging to learn to get back and forth between the lakes. There's a bridge to go under. There's a current there. I've been through there many times with a pontoon. It's doable. Sometimes with the water's shallow, you got to get out and walk it through, but there's good access between these 2 lakes. So being on Little Lakoutere gives you kind of the privacy and the quiet feel of a small lake, but access to the big lake. And if you remember, Lakoutere is also accessible over to Grindstone, at least at certain times. So on Little Lakoutere, only 4 places sold in the last 2 years, $516,000 for an average sale price. And they sold quickly, 60 days on market, and they sold over full asking price. So very desirable lake. And then I told you at the end, I would give you one that's kind of a bit of a sleeper. That is Nelson Lake. The reason I say that is because, number one, 10 minutes from Hayward, so it's a great location. The price points on Nelson are a little bit more reasonable. You can see the average sale price was $500,000, but things sell quickly. They sold for almost full price. The difference with this lake from all of the rest that I discussed is that it is a flowage. So it is not as clean and clear of water. The water has that brownish tannin look to it, but I've seen lots of beautiful clear frontage on Nelson Lake. I've also seen back bays where it can be a little bit muddy, mucky, weedy. So Nelson Lake is a little bit of a mixed bag, but it's larger than all the rest of these that we discussed today. It's 2,500 acres, but the price points I think stay down a little bit because it doesn't have that really clear water. But I feel like it's a great lake for fishing. It has lots of bars and restaurants on it, resorts that have bars, probably 5 or 6 of them, location-wise. And also, if you look at the frontage individually, you can find really great frontage. I would say the higher-end prices on this lake probably were the more desirable frontage. Some of these were fixer-upper properties. I've shown a number of these in my work over the last year or two. But kind of a little bit of a, not hidden, but a little bit of a gem when you look at the price points to get on a larger lake in a great area. And then I wanted to talk just a minute about vacant land. I know I get long-winded with these videos, so hopefully you made it to the end, but good for you if you did. So vacant land on all of these lakes combined. So we discussed 9 lakes in this tier 2 category. And this is all of the vacant land that's sold with the exclusion of the off-water Loch Lomond properties on Red Cedar. So we've got, I believe these were both on Red Cedar, the first 2. This one was on Little Lac-Courte, another one on Red Cedar, 1 on Sand Lake, the Red Cedar, Red Cedar, Red Cedar, and then we have 2 on Nelson. This one had pretty undesirable frontage and, just not a good shape of lot, etc. So that's not really representative of what you would expect to pay. But when you look at this, you realize how few vacant lots are selling. I also checked right now, and there is only 3 lots available on all of these lakes right now. And then 1 on Whitefish came up for sale for $375,000. It went under contract almost right away. I don't know yet what the final sale price is, but there had not been any property on Whitefish for the last 2 years, and 1 came up for sale, went under contract right away. So it's getting very difficult to find vacant land on these lakes. And if you're a seller who owns vacant land, keep in mind your value might be a lot more than you think, and feel free to reach out. I'd be happy to give you some additional information on that and give you an idea of what your property might be worth. So average of $220, but I think that's kind of on the low end of what you would expect to pay on a lot of these lakes because there just wasn't much that sold on the majority of these lakes. So I think your price point is probably more like an average of $325,000 or $350,000, varying some depending on the lake. I hope you found this helpful and enjoyed the deep dive into the tier 2 lakes. I hope this provides some additional insights when you're looking for lakes. Again, I'm Audrey Miller with Northwest Wisconsin Realty Team. Feel free to like, subscribe, share my channel, or reach out anytime if you have any questions about buying or selling or just about living in Hayward, Wisconsin.